The girl with no past. The rescue team found her in the wreckage. A small alien girl, no older than 12, curled in the corner of a shattered escape pod. She had white-gray skin, glowing silver eyes, and strange markings along her arms that shimmered faintly in the light. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She only stared, quiet, calm, and cold. The wreckage was from an unknown ship. No flags, no crew, no ID. Just one survivor. Her. The colony's mystery. The human colony on Kesar 3 was quiet. Peaceful. No war. No battles. Just science and farming. So when the girl arrived, everyone stared. Dr. Elena Ray, the colony's head medical officer, was the first to touch her. "She's not dangerous," Elena said softly. "She's just lost." The girl didn't fight, didn't resist. She sat on the med table, silent as a ghost. Her skin was cold, her heartbeat slow. But she was alive. And that was the real mystery. No name, no words, no past. They asked her name. She said nothing. They scanned her for injuries. No wounds, no scars, not even a scratch. But her eyes, they were old, too old, like she had seen things no child should ever see. Elena tried to speak to her in different languages, human, trade common, even basic alien dialects. Still, no answer. The girl just stared at the stars through the glass window, like she was waiting for someone, or hiding from something. The DNA test. After 3 days, Elena followed protocol. She took a DNA sample, a simple scan, just to understand what species the girl was. The results came in an hour later. Elena sat at her desk, reading the report, and her heart stopped. GENGTACMATC, 95% human, 5% unknown, UNREGISTRED, EQUENC, HESTATUS, ANOMALY, ESCALAT to Earth Command. She read it twice, then a third time. It was impossible. The girl looked alien, but her DNA was mostly human. The other 5%, not from any known species, not in any galactic record, not even in classified files. The warning. That night, Elena sent a private message to Earth Command. She didn't share everything, just enough to flag interest. She didn't want the girl taken away. Not until she knew more. The next morning, she woke to find 2 things. A message from Earth Command. Do not interact further. Hold the subject in quarantine. A retrieval ship is en route. And soldiers, armed and silent, already walking through the colony gates. The escape plan. Elena rushed to the medbay. The girl sat on the bed, still silent, watching the sun rise through the glass. Elena knelt beside her. "I don't know who you are," she whispered, "but they're coming to take you." The girl finally looked into her eyes. No fear, just quiet understanding. And then, for the first time, she moved. She reached out and gently touched Elena's hand. In that moment, Elena felt something strange. A memory, but not her own. A lab, screaming, lights, wires and flesh, and a voice. "She's not ready. She's just a child." Then it was gone. The girl pulled her hand away. The first clue. Elena stared at her. "You showed me that, didn't you?" The girl didn't answer. But her eyes. They were no longer empty. They were watching, choosing. The soldiers arrive. The doors slammed open. 2 Earth soldiers entered the room. "Step away from the subject." Elena stood between them and the girl. "She's not dangerous," Elena said. "She's just." One of the soldiers cut her off. "She's not a she. She's a classified specimen. Stand down." Elena's hand hovered near the alarm button on her desk. But before she could press it, the lights flickered. The floor rumbled. And suddenly, Every screen in the med bay turned black, then white. Then, one single word appeared on the main screen. Project sub-GCST, Alpha. Alina's blood turned cold. She looked back at the girl. The girl was standing now, still silent, still watching. But her eyes were glowing. The secret file. The room was silent. The word on the screen blinked. Project sub-GCST, Alpha. Alina stepped back from the terminal. Her heart pounded. She had never heard of Project Echo. It wasn't in any colony medical archive, not even in restricted files. Behind her, the two soldiers tensed. Where did that come from? One barked. The girl didn't move. Her glowing eyes slowly dimmed. The lights stopped flickering. The screen turned black again. And just like that, the system rebooted. Alina turned to the soldiers. "She's not a subject," she said firmly. "She's a child." The taller soldier stepped forward. "She's not your concern anymore." He reached for the girl. She stepped back. For the first time, there was fear in her eyes. Alina moved fast. She hit the manual lockdown button under her desk. A red alarm flashed. Emergency NMENTENJGG. Steel walls dropped over the med bay doors. "We're not done here," Alina said, standing between the girl and the soldiers. Help from the shadows. In another part of the colony, a man sat inside a dim room filled with blinking tech. Seth Kane, former systems engineer, now off-grid hacker. Smart, sharp, dangerous, and the only person Alina trusted with secrets. Her emergency signal blinked on his screen. He smiled. Knew she'd call me one day. He pulled up the colony's security feed and paused. He zoomed in on the medbay camera. The girl's eyes were glowing. Seth leaned closer. "What are you?" Alina breaks the rules. Hours later, the lockdown was lifted. The soldiers were gone, but only temporarily. Earth Command gave Alina 24 hours to prepare the subject for transport. No questions, no delays. But Alina had already made a choice. That night, she smuggled the girl out of the medical wing. Under her coat, quiet as the wind, the girl followed. They made their way to the old utility tunnels under the colony. There, in a dark room filled with old servers, Seth was waiting. The file that was never meant to be found. "I need to know what Project Echo is," Alina said. Seth raised an eyebrow. "You're finally ready to break some laws." "She's worth it." Seth grinned and got to work. Minutes passed. The girl stood quietly, her eyes flicking over the screens. Then something clicked. FILEFO Topt Securate Level 9 Clearance Project EKO Status Terminated. Subject Alpha Missing. Seth's face went pale. "Alina, this isn't just illegal. It's buried. Like deep, deep buried. Show me." The truth begins to unfold. They opened the file. Video logs, genetic charts, audio files. A doctor's voice echoed from the speakers. "We tried to fuse alien and human DNA. We called her Subject Alpha, but she was more than an experiment. She was aware." Another voice, colder. "Terminate the project. Destroy all data. Nothing must remain." But one final note caught their eyes. "Subject escaped. Believe dead. Do not pursue. If found, do not engage." Alina sat down slowly. The pieces began to form. She wasn't born, like other kids, she whispered. She was made. The girl looked at Alina. Her expression still blank, but her eyes, filled with questions. The power inside her, suddenly, the lights flickered. Seth jumped. "That's not me." The girl raised her hand. Faint sparks danced at her fingertips. Blue, bright, gentle, but powerful. She looked frightened. Seth backed away. Okay, okay. No sudden moves. Alina stepped closer. It's all right. You're not a monster. The girl blinked. Then spoke for the first time. Just one word. A whisper. Mama. Alina's heart stopped. She knelt, tears filling her eyes. I'm not your real mother, she said softly. The girl looked at her again. No, but you care. The clock is ticking. Back at the colony gates, the Earth military team was preparing the ship. Bring the girl in by force if needed, the officer said. We leave by sunrise. End scene. The choice. In the tunnels, Alina turned to Seth. We run. Seth looked at the girl, then at Alina. You know what she is, right? What she could become. Alina nodded. She's more than science. She's more than fear. She's the key to everything. The girl stepped forward. Then let's go. The lights above them glowed brighter, responding to her. The future had just taken its first step. The powers within. Snow fell softly over the outer walls of the Cassar III colony. Inside, the silence was cracking. The girl was changing. She had no name, no memory. But now she had something else. Power. And it was waking up. Running into the wild. Alina, Seth, and the girl had escaped through the underground tunnels just before sunrise. The soldiers found the medical bay empty. The bed still warm. The DNA scanner blinking with error codes. Lock the colony down. The lead officer ordered. Search every tunnel, every sensor. That girl is not leaving this planet. But it was already too late. They were gone. Into the forest. For the first time in her short, strange life, the girl felt wind. Real wind. It touched her skin, her face, her silver-white hair. She stood on a small ridge above the colony and stared at the wild forest ahead. Alina and Seth moved quickly, guiding her through the trees. They had one goal: reach the signal tower, an old relay system at the edge of the planet, strong enough to contact allies off-world. If they could get there, they could ask for help, protection, or at least time. But time was not on their side. The first surge. That night, they camped in a hidden cave near the cliffs. Seth sat by a fire, checking his damage datapad. Alina wrapped the girl in a thermal blanket. Are you okay? She asked gently. The girl didn't answer, but her eyes kept flicking to the fire. And then her hand. Sparks danced at her fingertips again. Blue, bright, flickering. This time, she didn't seem scared. She looked curious. A warning from the past. Seth pulled up a decrypted audio file from Project ECHO. Her powers are tied to her emotions. Fear, sadness, even joy. It all feeds the energy. If she ever loses control, there will be no stopping it. Alina's eyes darkened. She turned to the girl. We're going to help you learn, she said softly. No more fear. No more cages. They're being watched. Far above the cave, hidden in the trees, a dark figure crouched. Not human. Not part of Earth Command. Something else. Its eyes glowed faintly green. Its mouth opened, releasing a low, clicking sound. A signal. To others. A moment of peace. Inside the cave, Alina brushed the girl's hair. You're not just power. You're a person. Do you understand? The girl looked up. Slowly, she nodded. Do I have a name? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Alina smiled, tears in her eyes. You can choose one. The girl thought for a long moment. Then she said, Nova. Alina squeezed her hand. Nova it is. The creature's attack. The ground shook. Seth jumped to his feet. Something's coming. From the shadows outside, 3 creatures emerged. Tall, insect-like, fast. They weren't soldiers. They weren't even from Earth. They were the ones who created the alien part of Nova's DNA, and they were here to bring her back. Nova stood frozen. Alina raised her weapon. Seth activated a defense shield. But the creatures were too fast. One leaped, right at Alina. The explosion of power. Nova screamed. Her eyes flashed. Her hands rose. And the cave exploded with light. A shockwave of energy burst outward. The fire vanished. The air shimmered. And the three creatures were thrown into the sky, burning, disintegrating into ash. Silence. Then wind. Then the sound of crackling snow falling back to the earth. The aftermath. Nova stood in the center of the cave, breathing hard. Her hair floated slightly, like it was underwater. Her body glowed faintly. Power hummed through the stones around her. Alina stepped forward, slowly. Nova. I didn't mean to, Nova whispered. They were going to hurt you. Alina hugged her tight. You saved us. Nova didn't smile. She looked at her hands. Is this what I am now? The alien hunt begins. The next morning, the sky above the forest was darker than before. Thick clouds rolled in, hiding the stars. The air felt heavier. Nova sat near the cold ashes of the fire, her knees pulled to her chest. She had a name now. She had power. But she also had questions, and someone out there had answers. Answers that were hunting her. Tracking signals. Seth crouched near a broken sensor spike, scanning the area. We've got movement, he said. About 2 clicks south. Not human. Alina frowned. Earth command. Seth shook his head. Worse. He showed the display. 6 red dots, moving fast, and they were coming straight for them. Nova's visions begin. As the group packed to move, Nova paused. Her eyes flickered with blue light. She touched a tree and suddenly froze. Alina rushed to her. Nova. Nova's voice was distant, echoing. They are close. They know I'm awake. They're not soldiers. They're family. She pulled her hand back, breath shaking. I saw them. I saw where I came from. Flashback. A memory unlocked. For a few seconds, Nova remembered. A cold white room. Bright lights. Figures in silver armor. One bent down. Its voice soft, strange, but full of care. You are the bridge. You are the future, but you must stay hidden. Then, screams, fire, running, and then, nothing. Nova opened her eyes. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I was taken. I wasn't meant to survive. Chased through the forest. The team moved fast. Alina in front. Seth watching the rear. Nova in the middle. They ran through dense trees and glowing moss-covered rocks. Behind them, the hunters arrived. 6 tall, armored beings with smooth dark skin and glowing green eyes. They weren't shouting. They didn't need to. They were hunting with purpose, to recover what was theirs. Seth's tech trap. At a narrow gorge, Seth stopped. I got a surprise for them, he smirked. He dropped 2 microdrones with pulse mines. As soon as the hunters stepped into the path, boom, a flash of light and a blast of pressure threw 2 of them off their feet. But the others kept coming. Faster, angrier. Seth cursed. That only slowed them. Nova stands her ground. Suddenly, Nova stopped running. No more running. Alina turned. Nova, we have to keep moving. But Nova stood still. Her eyes began to glow. Her hands lit up with pulsing energy. They're not just here to take me back, she whispered. They're here to erase me. The first confrontation. The lead alien stepped into view. He was taller than the rest, his armor marked with ancient symbols. He didn't raise a weapon. He spoke in a language Nova suddenly understood. Child of 2 worlds, you were not meant to awaken. Nova answered him in the same tongue. Why was I made? The alien paused. You were hope, but hope became fear. Nova's voice turned cold. Then you came to destroy me. The alien slowly drew a glowing blade. I came to end what should not exist. The burst of power. Elena moved to shield Nova, but Nova stepped forward. I'm done hiding. Her eyes flared bright blue, like stars. A shockwave of energy burst out from her body, knocking the hunters back. The leader staggered, stunned. Nova looked at him. I am not your experiment. I am not your secret. I am alive. The hunters retreat. The hunters didn't speak again. They turned and vanished into the trees, disappearing like smoke. Seth blinked. They just left. Nova stared after them. No, they're watching, waiting. They know what I can do now. End scene. A new goal. Later that night, as they camped again near the river, Elena sat beside Nova. What do you want to do now? She asked. Nova looked up at the stars. They didn't want me to exist, but I do. She turned to Elena. I want to know who my father was. Elena nodded. Then we find him, no matter what. Nova's hand glowed gently in the dark. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was searching for truth, for identity, for a place in the galaxy. The origin. Nova sat quietly near the fire, watching the stars blink between tree branches. Each one felt like a question. She had power. She had memories. But she didn't have truth. And now, she was ready to find it. The hidden facility. Seth pulled up an old star map from his datapad. There's something strange here, he said, pointing to a region outside charted space. No colonies, no travel routes, just a name. Echo Station 1. Elena leaned in. Project Echo. Nova's pulse quickened. She stood. Take me there. Journey into silence. Their stolen scout ship flew for 3 days through dead space. No signals, no beacons, just silence. Then they saw it, a black facility, half buried inside a dead asteroid. Echo Station 1. Cold, abandoned, forgotten. Or so it seemed. The ghosts of Project Echo. Inside, the air was still. Lights flickered as power came back online. Walls were scratched with claw marks. Broken tanks lined the halls. Nova walked through slowly, like her feet remembered the way before her mind did. Seth found an old data core, still active. He plugged it in. The video played. The truth revealed. A scientist appeared on screen. Tired. Afraid. This is Dr. Ren Halleck, lead geneticist, Project Echo. We did it. We created life from both species, human and Krylani. But it wasn't just science. It was something else. Subject Alpha, Nova, was born naturally. She is the first of her kind, the child of peace, of love. Nova's breath caught. Her mother was human. Her father, the Krylani commander who once tried to stop the war. The video glitched, then returned. They feared what she could represent, so they destroyed the program, tried to erase her. If this message survives, Nova, find the beacon, find your father. He's still alive. The screen went dark. Nova stood frozen. Tears rolled down her face. My parents loved each other. The shock of blood and hope. Elena hugged her. You're not just a lab creation. You're something more powerful. Seth added quietly, you're proof that enemies can create life, not just destroy it. Nova nodded. A fire grew behind her eyes. I need to find him. If he's alive, he needs to know I survived too. The beacon core. They reached the back of the station. There, inside a hidden chamber, was a large crystal device, the Krylani beacon. Nova stepped forward. It began to glow. Suddenly, visions filled her mind. A tall alien figure with silver armor. Kind eyes. A soft voice. Nova, if you ever find this, I'm still searching for you. Then, a star map burned into her memory. A place far from Earth. far from anything human. Krylani home space. The danger awakens. But the beacon had another effect. Far away, a signal was received. On a hidden Krylani ship, a general stood. "She found the beacon," he growled. "She's coming for him." An officer asked, "Do we intercept?" The general's eyes narrowed. "No, let her come. We'll end this the way it should have ended years ago." Nova's choice. Back on the ship, Nova stared at the stars. "I know where he is now," she said. "But if we go there, the Krylani will come after us." Elena looked at her. "Are you sure?" Nova turned, eyes glowing. "I've been hunted my whole life. Now it's time. I find the people who hid me, and show them I'm not afraid anymore." The standoff. The stars looked different now. Nova wasn't a lost girl anymore. She was a message, a mirror, a living truth that both sides wanted to forget. And now she was flying straight toward the home of her father's people, Krylani space, crossing the border. Their ship dropped out of hyperspace near the edge of a dying star system. Ahead floated a planet cloaked in blue storms and lightning. Krylos Prime, capital of the Krylani Empire. A world where no human ship had ever been allowed. Seth stared at it through the viewport. "We're seriously doing this." Nova nodded. "They need to see me. All of them." Elena frowned. "And if they try to kill you?" Nova looked back, her silver blue eyes glowing. Then they were never ready for peace. Arrival under fire. As their ship approached orbit, alarms rang. Krylani warships surrounded them. "Unidentified vessel, power down immediately. You are entering restricted space." Elena responded, steady and clear. "We have a message for the Council." From Subject Alpha. There was silence. Then, "Hold position. Do not attempt to land. The Council will decide." A dangerous invitation. They were escorted to the surface. Their ship landed inside a sealed hangar, watched by dozens of Krylani soldiers. No smiles. No welcome. Nova stepped out first. Eyes forward. Face calm. But her hands shook slightly. A tall female Krylani in ceremonial armor approached. "I am Commander Vurin," she said coldly. "You will speak only when spoken to." Nova met her eyes. "I'm not a soldier. I'm not a threat. I'm here because your people helped create me." That made Vurin pause. Then she turned sharply. "Follow me." The Council of Silence. The Krylani High Council chamber was a cold, silver hall with glowing blue walls. At the center stood 5 elders, ancient, powerful, and unreadable. Nova stood before them, alone. Elena and Seth were held outside. No weapons, no translators. Nova didn't need one. She understood their language now. The truth confronted. One elder spoke. "You are the result of a forbidden experiment. We buried Project Echo for a reason." Nova stood tall. "You buried it because it worked, because it scared you." Another elder leaned forward. "You are an imbalance, neither Krylani nor human." Nova's voice shook, but she didn't stop. "I am both. That's not a weakness. It's the proof that peace was possible." She stepped closer. "My father was Krylani. My mother was human. And they didn't fear each other. They loved." The room went still. One of the elders, older than the rest, stood slowly. "Do you know what your father became?" Nova blinked. "He disappeared. I never saw him again." The elder's voice darkened. "He was executed for treason." The shock. Nova's heart shattered. Executed. The man she never got to meet was killed for loving her mother, for protecting her. Her eyes filled with tears. "I came all this way to find a grave." The spark of rage. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Power swirled around Nova's hands. The elders stepped back. Soldiers raised weapons. Nova didn't attack. She raised her voice, trembling but strong. You killed the one man who believed peace was possible. You hid me to erase your guilt. But I survived. I am the echo of what you feared." She paused, "And I'm not hiding anymore." The final warning. Outside, Alina and Seth were brought back in. Varen whispered something to the guards. A decision had been made. The High Council spoke. "Leave this world. Do not return. If you speak of this, Earth will suffer." Nova stepped forward, staring into their eyes. "The galaxy will hear the truth, whether you allow it or not." The escape. Back aboard their ship, Seth read the scans. "Krylani ships are preparing to follow. We don't have long." Nova didn't flinch. She opened the encrypted beacon signal and uploaded her entire memory to a public channel. The truth about Project Echo, her origin, her father's execution, everything. "Let them come," she said. "I've already spoken." A new future. Nova sat alone at the front of the ship, looking out at the stars. The transmission was sent. The truth was out. There was no going back. The galaxy reacts. Across systems, on space stations, human colonies, alien worlds, her message played. "My name is Nova. I was created by both human and Krylani hands, not as a weapon, not as a mistake, but as proof that peace was possible." She told them about Project Echo, about her mother and father, about the Krylani Council that executed truth, and about what she had become, not through war, but through survival. Hope or war. The reactions were instant and divided. Some human leaders called her a security threat. Others saw her as a bridge between species. Some Krylani feared her, but many whispered, "If she is both, why should we remain divided?" A message from the shadows. As the ship prepared to leave Krylani space, a signal came through. Encrypted. Unknown origin. Elena opened it. A deep voice filled the room. "Nova, your father was not the only one who believed in unity. Others still remain, waiting, hidden. If you are brave enough to lead, we will follow." Nova's breath caught. Who is this? But the signal cut off. Seth looked at her. "You just started a revolution. A final choice." Earth Command demanded she return to stand trial. The Krylani High Council ordered her banned from their systems. Two sides. Two threats. Two worlds stuck in the past. And Nova. Nova chose neither. The Unity flight. Elena, Seth, and Nova rerouted the ship toward neutral space, a forgotten outpost floating near a dead moon. There, representatives from both species were already gathering. Refugees, dreamers, fighters, those tired of endless war, those ready for something new. Nova stood before them, her voice calm, her energy glowing softly. "You've seen what fear can destroy. Now it's time to see what hope can build." The beginning, not the end. That day, a new mission was born. The Unity Project. Led by Nova. Protected by Elena and Seth. Supported by humans, Krylani, and even more species who had waited for someone to stand between the lines. Not as a weapon, not as a symbol, but as a voice. Closing scene. Nova stepped out onto a platform above the stars. She closed her eyes and whispered, "You tried to erase me, but I became louder than your silence. I was made in secret, but now I lead in the light." Her hands lit with soft blue fire. She turned to her crew. "Let's go build something better." The ship's engines roared to life. And across the galaxy, a new future had already begun. The end.